Ooh. Well, good afternoon. Well, good evening, all. I'm in Denver right now, so my time is all the way off. But again, I am Kyle Carter. Technically, I'm now the Chief Executive Officer for NAMI Philadelphia. I got a bit of a title change, but again, happy to be here. Again, I work centers around removing the stigma of mental health. So my work has centered in that space, whether a licensed clinician, professor of psychology, and along with running intellectual disability and developmental disability programs. So my work has kind of been steeped in this space for a long time. So looking forward to having this conversation, hopefully contributing some thought leadership. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kyle. All right, and again, as I call everyone up, you just give a brief introduction of yourself and then we'll dive right into our questions. So the next panelist is Lauren Joy Goss-Marr, Clinical Supervisor at Starview Community Service. Welcome, Lauren Joy.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon for me. I'm on the West Coast. We're still 4 o'clock. We're not evening yet. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm a supervisor at a community mental health clinic serving the greater Los Angeles area. I have been in the mental health field for about 9 years at this point. And before that, I came to LA to become an actor. So I use a lot of that creative parts in therapy, and I really love what I do.
Thank you so much for being with us here this afternoon-ish evening. And last but most certainly not least, we'd like to welcome Randall K. Smith, founder and CEO of Renaissance Cares Incorporated.
Uh-oh. Well, hello, everyone. I am Randall K. Smith, as Sonia said. Kim said, excuse me. Sorry, Kim. As Kim said, and I have been involved with Renaissance Care since 2015. I have been in the drag community for 50 years, probably, but the need for knowing what our transgender and our LGBTQIA members needed was where Renaissance Cares was birthed from. So I'm excited to be a part of this community to talk about not only the mental health, but the wealth of being who we are, how we are, and how we exist in this world. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. So again, as we said, we are touching on the mental health aspect and needs of those in the LGBTQ plus community, specifically Black individuals. And according to the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, over a majority, 54% of LGBTQ adults of color are battling for mental health today. Transgender adults of color are even more likely, with 61%, to face these struggles in their daily lives. So the numbers don't lie. The numbers are pertinent, or sometimes they might, but these numbers do not lie. We do see a high percentage of need within the community. And so today, 3 of our overarching things that we want to make sure that we leave here understanding is understanding what are the needs of this community, what are the barriers to the community getting what they need, and how do we help? Sound Minds is all about advocacy. We're all about learning, crossing, lines to understand others who are like us and not like us, so that we can be advocates, and like I said, be educated advocates for each other. So I want to start with this question, and all the questions are open to anyone who would like to answer. So there are some societal assumptions that when a member of the LGBTQ plus community seeks therapy, that their sexual orientation impacts their therapeutic needs. What do you feel about this? And what do you feel are the true primary reasons that Black LGBTQ plus community members seek services? Anyone? Everybody seen Ferris Bueller? Anyone?
That's why I laughed, because I laughed because of that.
I can speak to it. As far as I think that more often than not, people seek therapeutic supports and engage, and there's retention there when you feel a connection with the person. It doesn't necessarily have to be centered around sexual orientation, but just a connection, feeling seen for who you are, 360 degrees. So I think sexual orientation is a piece of it, but just feeling like there's some unique connection between a person. That's why a lot of Black and brown folks, they might go initially, but then they don't, there's not a real retention rate. I forget what it is. It's somewhere around 75% of folks that don't actually retain in their therapeutic supports. So I think just, creating that sense of connection, regardless of the sexual orientation, is, prominent if you want to see somebody retain their supports. What was the second part to that question? I'm sorry.
Or just, and part of it is, just some providers may think, well, you're coming here and you're LGBTQIA plus, that must be your issue. That must be the overarching reason why you're here. And so it's that misconception that we want to get away from. And so understanding that, and then what are the true needs? Like what has been seen as most of the reasons that Black LGBTQIA plus community members are seeking services for?
Well, I'll just speak him. I'm sorry. Let me not.
Go for it.
I just wanted to add this briefly. I think with the part of what you're saying, that I'll kick it to Randall to respond to more specificity. A lot of implicit and explicit biases by therapists that are integrated into it. I was a clinician myself. And we are not perfect by any means. And I'm sure Lauren will speak to that as well. So there's a lot of bias. So, thinking that that's the only reason why somebody want to come in when you have no idea what the full totality of what the supports they may need. Those are biases that can be very damaging and toxic to a therapeutic environment. So the hope is that we continue to be more culturally competent and remove those whenever possible. But I want to kick it to you, Randall. Thank you for your time.
No, that was exactly what I was going to say. It really is about biases. It's about relatability. Most of the time, people are when they're going to doctor's office or seeking health care, whether it is a mental health care or physical health care, it's all about relatability. They want people that look like them, that has experienced life like them, lived experiences, or at least understand their lifestyle. And I think that's a lot of the challenge comes to when a person doesn't understand your lifestyle or understand you. So therefore, they feel like, most, I think LGBTQIA people feel like, you don't understand my plight. You don't understand my day-to-day living. You don't understand where I come from. A lot of times I have to hide in the day and come out at night because that's the only scene that I am actually accepted in. I can't come out in the daytime because I may be too flamboyant, or I may dress a certain way, or I may look a certain way. So the nighttime is where I have to relate to. So what happens is when we're going to those healthcare people, oftentimes the implicit biases are relevant, or people shun or truth their nose up, or sometimes it's about lifestyle, meaning sexual orientation, not just sex, but sexual orientation and some of the things that they do through sexual orientation that may not be of the norm. But the first thing that a clinician does is toot their nose up or says, ew, or have a look on their face or have an expression in their face or their body language that says, oh my gosh. I took a class with the health department here a few years ago. And that was one of the first things that I learned, that as a counselor, you needed to be calm, collected, and not be judgmental with your verbal communication or with your body language, because that's really what happens. And people can sense when you're not comfortable. People can sense when the clinician is not comfortable. They can sense when you really don't want them there. So that's why they don't return. That's exactly why that 75% they say, I'm not going there. So they're oftentimes seeking a LGBTQIA person, or like I said, an ally to get their health care.
So kind of just to circle back to what they were both saying, I think the important thing as a clinician is to listen to what the client is telling me is the problem. I know I'm almost 40 and I've been out for a long time. I've come to terms with my sexuality. So I remember going to a therapist and all the therapist wanted to talk to me about was about the fact that I was gay. And I was like, baby, that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I'm depressed. So what are we doing? So I think it's really important.
I'm not depressed because I'm gay.
No, that's not the problem. And so I think it's really important that when clients come into the room, that we as clinicians we don't jump the gun and try to over assess something or pathologize something that the client is not saying is an issue. And to what Randall was saying about that bias and that judgment of feeling like there's a fear sometimes, if I go to therapy, are all they going to see is the gay, is the trans, is the queer, and not see me. And that is a big barrier, I think, to a lot of people in the community from going to therapy, because they are labeled everywhere else, and they're coming here to get help, and they don't want to be labeled in that room as well with the therapists.
Yeah. And something you said, Randall, you talked about, like you said, about wanting someone like me. And so that was another question I was going to pose, is what may impact a member of the Black LGBTQ plus community, their preference in seeing a therapist who is within the same community versus one who is not. I've done teletherapy before, and I've had clients who in their intro statement, are sent to me, and some don't care, whether or not they are of, the therapist is of the community or not, but they do want them to be well-versed and understanding. But there are some who definitely I want a therapist who is LGBTQ, and so what do you all think differentiates, or what impacts one's preference one way or another?
I would say acceptability and knowledge. Like I said, making me feel comfortable, making the client feel comfortable, and most importantly, more than anything, probably referrals. Oftentimes it's referrals. I mean, we get a lot of times, well, have you gone there? Did somebody else gay go there? How do they treat, and this is the terminology. How do they treat the gays? How do they treat the gays? So oftentimes it's referrals, so we want to make sure, even if they are an ally, that are they gay friendly? Right. Do they like our kind? That kind of thing, because that's really where it comes into, is most of the time it's referrals. A few of us are a little bit more go-getters that'll go out to clinician that we don't know or that we think about, but most of the time they are going through referrals because they want to feel comfortable. Or going to a gay center, where they know that they're gay friendly.
So what about one's own comfortability with themselves and that impact on their choice as well?
Sonia, a lot of times that is very key, but what happens is, and that's a dichotomy, because it's such a profound situation. No matter how secure you are in your sexuality, you still have some vulnerability of how people see you and how people judge you. That's the issue. It's not that I'm not comfortable with my sexuality, but oftentimes I don't want to be judged. Or I don't want to be the office conversation. Did you know he came in here and he talked about his sexual partners? That ain't why I came in there. Like we said, we're talking about my mental health. We're talking about my mental wealth. But they want to talk about, he's gay and he sleeps with 12 different men at one time, that kind of thing, or she's transgender. I don't understand transgender. So that's literally what happens is, most people, no matter how secure they are, they still have that insecurity of how people are going to judge them or view them or talk about them.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I was gonna say, I can speak from personal experience and from clients of the explanation. Sometimes it's more comfortable going to somebody who's going to be from the community, because I don't have to explain everything about what it's like to be queer. They have some frame of reference, and I don't have to come in explaining like, well, this is what it is, and these are the labels, and this is what I am, and this is what this and that. But again, it depends on the client. If I'm not coming there to hash out my issues when it comes to my sexuality, I may not need a clinician who necessarily is, I want somebody who's culturally competent and going to be accepting, but I may not need somebody who's in the community, because again, maybe I came to talk about anxiety or PTSD, and it's more important to me to have somebody who's very well versed in working with trauma than it is to have somebody who is from the community. So I think it really depends.
Kyle, did you want to add to that?
Absolutely. They have captured everything. I ain't got nothing to add.
I don't want to leave you out.
Okay. I'm just listening. Thank you.
All right. So as we know, there is a lot of intersectionality in being Black and LGBTQ plus. You have race, you have gender identity, you have, you know, sexual orientation. Sometimes religion plays a part depending on beliefs and things like that. So how does having multiple marginalized identities impact one's mental health?
Huge. That's huge.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it.
You got all of this stuff going on in your head. That's huge. But somebody else take that.
I mean, I feel like one of the often working with youth and then also working with the Black and Brown community, especially when I worked with the city, the phrase that's often used is resilient. But so often than not, and when you think about all those different areas you named, you have to develop resilience in each one of those areas. It's draining. It's draining to have to work through all those things. So it develops a bit of fear. So in order to, you have to get past all those layers to even want to step in the therapist's door. So I just think all the backdrops to all the things you named just create so many layers or barriers to being able to, add to your quality of life by seeking therapeutic support. So it makes it so challenging.
Yeah, it can be really exhausting because you're wearing different faces of yourself depending on which community you're in. And if you haven't done the work to try to bring all of those different parts of yourself together, it can be incredibly exhausting. Being in the closet over here, but then being out over here, and then, only telling your family certain things about who you're dating, but then telling all your friends all your business, or maybe not certain friends, depending on which community. It's exhausting. It can be really exhausting. And then, like Randall was saying, trying to make sense of what all those different labels mean is a lot of work. It's a lot to take on. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't do the work. And so they just live in these different compartments. Mm-hmm. And that's draining. It's really draining.
It is. That's really what it is. It's toxic because that creates that creates that mental health issue. That creates that barrier because you're trying to be so many different things to different people. And it's hard. And that's when you need that outlet and that out to be who you really are. But you are trying to hide from, you go to church and the pastors, talks about homosexuality in the pulpit, and then the people are looking around and you're stiff because you don't want anybody to look at you. And, you go, you're in public or you're at work and, somebody says something in a gay slur and you're trying not to be gay, or, you're trying to hold your mule because you don't want to, let loose because what are you saying? So it's just a whole lot of different emotions you're going through in order to deal with that, from a religious aspect, from a work aspect, from just your ethics in general, and from a family aspect, because a lot of people don't talk about their sexuality or their lifestyle with their family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would imagine which layer is someone coming at me with? Like you said, if you're in church or somewhere and you hear somebody say a slur, are they coming at you because you're gay, because you're Black, because you're a man, a woman? When you're wearing all of the labels of intersectionality, like, how do you know which one is being attacked at which time? And that I can imagine that's very difficult. Going into the church, you mentioned the church. So are we seeing more acceptance in church for LGBTQ plus communities and individuals? Or what are we seeing in church these days? And how is that impacting us as well?
I'm going to say yes, but at the same time, no. But I'm going to say yes. You are seeing more acceptance of LGBT because, first of all, the LGBTQIA community has been in the church for years. I mean, I hate to talk about the stereotypes of our church, especially our Black churches.
The choir director. The choir director.
Yeah, from the
That's
choir
always
director.
Been, they always say, "Oh, the choir director."
Yeah, look, Sonia, not only the choir director, the pastor, but
we're here to speak out, Randall. Speak out.
The ministerial staff. So my thing is, we have always been prominent in the Black church. Mm-hmm. White churches have been, our Caucasian counterparts have been a little bit more accepting when it comes to church and religion, but we're getting better at it because I think because so many more people are more flamboyant and comfortable in their skin, but they also love the Lord and they also love singing and dancing and praising God. So I think that's where it's having to happen a little bit more. And some of our newfound pastors know that they want their black dollar.
Mm.
They want their black dollar. So that's why these
Mhm.
mega churches are more accepting. I know I keep saying Kim, I'm sorry. I keep saying Sonya. Please forgive me.
For those who don't know, Sonya is my sister.
Everybody, yes. So thank you. When you have these mega churches who are truly, they want the black dollar. They want those tithes. They want that money. So they're going to do whatever necessary in order to waver to modern lifestyle. They may not like it, but they like the dollar.
That's such an excellent point, Randall. I was thinking about that earlier coming into this conversation, that working with the city, working in my clinical role, and then at NAMI, you know, we run a lot of different support groups for to support the group. And what I don't often see is genuine allyship.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell it's very transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, we have to, begrudgingly we're doing it, as opposed to really wanting to stand out there in front and make sure that everybody is treated equitably. So I agree. I see that in my role at NAMI, that some folks are interested in partnering, but that it's not genuine allyship.
Correct. It's about the dollar. Yeah, absolutely.
So what tells you that it's not genuine?
Because
verbiage, body language when you speak to folks, all those things that we just talked about earlier in previous questions that you see from therapists and clinicians, you can see the same thing from lay people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, I have to agree as well. And I hate to say that because I like to think that the church is moving to a more, not just tolerating, but actually affirming, people in the community that you belong here too. But you can tell in the way that people interact where it almost does feel like it's forced. Like, we're going to allow you to participate, but we're not invested in that lifestyle that you're doing over there. And in California, I live in Los Angeles, very progressive. We have a lot of very progressive Black and white churches, but nonetheless, there's a mega church here that I was a part of for years where I had to sign a contract that said, if I'm going to participate in this church, I will not engage in homosexual activities. And that was 10 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
You sign it?
What's that?
Did you sign it?
I did sign it because I wanted to serve the Lord. That was what I was there for. So I did sign it. And I was closeted at church and out on the weekends. And yeah. Wow. So, and that church has since revised their policies. And I've had discussions with people up in the upper levels in the church about how that affected me. And they talk the talk, but I don't really know if the heart is there behind it, or it's just we want to seem like we're accepting because this is LA and we want to make people feel like we accept them. I don't know.
Right. So we talked about, the difference in the statistics related to just general LGBTQ plus community versus trans individuals. Why do we think that there's such a separation of trans? It's like gay is fine, bisexual is fine, but trans, ooh. So what do we think? Why is that in the community? What do you see in that separation, and how can we combat it?
Understanding. I think oftentimes it's understanding, not really understanding why a person chose or feels like they are trans. And that's really none of our business. And that's what I think we have to look at. We just need to accept a person for the core values of what they have and who they are. But most of the time, we're not accepting of a trans brother or sister, especially those that we say are clockable, because we feel like, why are they doing that? Why do they want to live that lifestyle? Why do they want to, they weren't born that way. And it's really not our fight, it's not our plight, and it's not an answer that we have to answer to God. That's not our answer. So I think that's where we really have to follow is most people have a challenge because they don't understand it. And it's not for them to understand.
And for just the people, can you define what it means to be clockable, please?
There are some women that will walk around. There are some trans women that can walk around and look identical to women, and you wouldn't know that they were trans.
Okay.
A lot of times they work on themselves to not look like trans, and they look like our cisgender women. And until they tell you they're trans, that's the only way you know.
Okay.
And you have some men who are a little bit more masculine, who haven't been quote unquote taking a lot of hormones, who still have a little masculine edge. So when they actually are transitioning, they look a little bit more like a man, transitioning.
And so does that make them clockable, meaning that I
makes them clockable, right?
Okay.
Or a woman who's trying to transition to a male who still looks soft and feminine. She may not look like, a man just yet until she does the things that she needs to do. So that's what I mean by when they say clockable. So therefore, sometimes they get labeled, a man that, doesn't quite look like a female, they get labeled as a man in a dress or a man in a wig. There's always derogatory things. Or a woman, she's just trying to be butch, those kind of things. So, but people don't realize they are transitioning. Most of them are, or some of them are transitioning. I'm gonna say most, but some of them are transitioning, but in their transition, they haven't quite made it yet. But most of the time they get judgment during their transition.
Okay. And a word you use too is, people talk about why they chose that. So I think that's a big word too used in the community from the outside, like saying that someone chose this life, or you chose to, change to a woman or a man. And so how does that impact as well when, not, because that goes against respecting someone and who they are versus what they chose. And how does that impact mental health for LGBTQ plus and overall?
Yeah, that's a real triggering word in the community. Oh, you chose this lifestyle. I wish it was a choice. I wish it was. I would have saved myself a lot of heartache if I could have just been the nice wife and married a man and done, all that stuff. And not to be blunt about it, but I often get feedback from straight men, and I will say, well, did you choose to be straight? Did you choose to like women? Because if you could, then I see you with some of your buddies, y'all seem real close, you could just be with him. It's not a choice. You don't just you can't. That's not a thing. And as far as when it comes to gender, I agree with Randall about they don't understand, and there's a lot of fear about what they don't understand. And I think the thing about being transgender is you do have to make a lot of conscious decisions to transition. And so I think people get confused about like, well, you chose to take hormones, you chose to get surgery, you chose to feminize your face, or you chose to grow your facial hair. And I think that's where people get confused about this idea that it's a choice, because I'm taking actions to be more aligned with what my gender feels like. But it's no more a choice than, a cisgender woman who identifies as a woman putting on a dress in the morning when she goes out. It's just things that you do to make yourself feel more yourself. And I think that particularly for the trans community, I think that's where people get hung up on, because there are steps that you have to take.
And I would think that also would add to the need for a therapist to be well versed even in medicine, to service one in the trans community, to understand those pieces and the transitioning process and things. So that seems to be important there too. So we talk about, how, say, outsiders view and, stigmatize those within the LGBTQ plus community. But we do know that there are a lot of internal racisms in multiple groups. And so are there some internal stigmas and barriers to mental health that are seen within the LGBTQ plus community?
Absolutely. We just talked about, like? We've got all these new acronyms. LGBTQIA plus, and all of them don't understand each other. all of them don't understand each other. And there's always a separation between all of the letters.
Mm-hmm.
The lesbians, the bisexual, the gays, the trans, the inquisitive, whatever you want to call yourself, it's always the non-binary. People don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And because you don't understand, you still have that internal judgment. We still judge our own people. You know, the gay men don't understand the transgender men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the lesbian women don't understand the trans men.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you know, oftentimes even the racial lines, you know, black trans don't understand white trans. White trans don't understand black trans. It's just white gays don't understand black gays. You got to have a gay black pride. You got to have a gay white pride.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's always, you know, segmented. It's always segmented, and we do it to our own self. We look for equality. We ask for equality. We ask for everybody to judge us fairly, but we do it to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. You might want to add to that.
Sorry.
Don't be. That was a mic drop. That was a mic drop right there. And I think, you know, even speaking of, you know, the segmentation, I feel like it goes beyond sexual orientation and just capitalism in general. Way back, going all the way back, like us as a society, as opposed to have feudal systems, everything, we've always segmented each other. So I don't think it's that far removed from this conversation. It's unfortunate and it's divisive and it doesn't really add any value.
Right.
So as we talk about, you know, the impact on mental health and all these intersectionalities, we can add that too, because it's like hard to seek help out, but it sounds like it's also hard to seek help within.
Sometimes it can be, yes.
Okay.
Because again, it's all about a trust factor. You know, you want to go to your counselors or to your health professionals that you feel like you can trust, and not run into somebody that saw you. Oh, Randall went into the mental health, you know, department today. You know, is something wrong with him? You know, that kind of thing. Or someone, again, you know, just understanding, you know, what you're going through. So oftentimes, you know, because there are people, you know, there are people in the LGBTQIA that work in these industries, work at these hospitals, work at these clinics, you know, that may see you. And oftentimes it's about a trust level. Can I go in there and not be outed? Not about your sexuality, but can I not be outed about my mental issue or my mental health? Yep.
Within the community about both.
Within the community, correct. And oftentimes people won't ask for help, you know, because people are not going to ask, do you have a psychiatrist or a psychologist I can go see? Because then that's the first thing, it becomes a judgment zone. Becomes a judgment zone.
So it sounds like judgment is a huge piece of a barrier. So as we name barriers, you know, to seeking mental health services, even from diagnosis to therapy to medication management, it sounds like the judgment, vulnerability I've heard come out are big, and understanding. Would you say those are kind of top three? Anything else that sticks out as a barrier?
Huge.
I would say also the how do I say this? I think sometimes toxic traits are accepted in the gay community. I can speak as a lesbian woman that one of the toxic traits that's very acceptable is being like codependent and moving in right away, and like, you know, being attached to the hip and getting crazy, you know, kind of losing your mind a little bit in this relationship. And it's treated like, well, you know, that's just how lesbians are. And that it's and that's a real issue. And so it's just kind of laughed off as if it's not really something that needs to be addressed and worked on. And that is just like, well, that's how relationships are in lesbian communities. I can't speak, you know, to gay or trans because I'm not gay or trans, but I know for that community. But I think also there are some other things. Domestic violence is something that is not taken as seriously, because it's almost like, well, you know how they are. They get passionate and they're, you know, and like, no, that's unhealthy. That is toxic.
It's not taken seriously when it's same sex. It's like,
it
oh, you're
cannot
just
be.
fighting.
And not just
domestic.
outside of the community, but within the community. Yeah.
And domestic violence, unfortunately, in the LGBTQIA community is it's rampant. It really is. It really is.
So that'll be another need within the
Yes.
community,
That's a need, yes.
services for domestic violence.
Absolutely.
So we've identified so many barriers and things that keep us. So what would you say an ally or a provider could do, and even as we talk internal within the community, can do to create safe spaces for LGBTQ plus, I'm sorry, QIA plus Black individuals?
I think meetings like this, first of all, is doing inclusive things in the community. I know, like, like organizations like NASM or organizations that are out there, we have to really be a part of the community and in the community and of the community. And to really get people more interested in coming to the facilities, coming into the events. It's almost like you have to give them a party, educate them on the other end, if that makes sense. So you got to create community events, community outlets, whether you do it in the summer barbecues or pool parties, but through that, you've got to educate them that these are resources that are out there. Because oftentimes people don't know what the resources are. So we've got to keep those resources prevalent, but offer them resources, a safe space, coming into different organizations, coming into different events where they feel safe and secure, and then letting them know what's out there. What are some of the things that they have at their fingertips that can help them with whatever issue that may have, whether that's housing, whether that's domestic violence, whether that's mental wealth, whether that's really talking with a psychiatrist or psychologist, just various things of that nature, whether it's hormone shots or hormone medicine or testosterone, whatever it may be. You almost have to disguise it in order to make sure that they are coming, so that you can continue to educate them, because they're not going to seek that education most of the time by themselves.
I just want to go to the chat real quick. We are checking in here. So thank you for participating in this conversation through chat. Rachel says, some jobs make it difficult to seek help. Your sexuality and your mental health can put your livelihood at risk. I try to support and help my people. Stage appointments so that patients feel protected. And let's make mental health part of all levels of government a priority. End biases based on mental health. So that is powerful. And
yes.
Yeah. And especially if you have someone who, like we said, doesn't understand, makes judgments, and thinks that sexual orientation and gender identity impacts how you work, or who you work with. A lot of, those outside of the community do sexualize LGBTQ plus IA plus people very much. It's not, it's like everything is about sex, oh, you're gay because you're freaky, you like sex, it's like people say things like this not knowing it. Like you said, Lauren Joy, it is not a choice. It is who I'm attracted to. It is, as normal as a hetero relationship, but and so one with those types of thoughts and ideas can be very dangerous to one's livelihood. Have you all known anyone who's had to remain closeted at work in order to maintain their jobs, or any stories like that that you have heard of?
I can speak to my best friend. I know he was, I had the honor of seeing him marry the love of his life a couple months ago in Baltimore. So that was a beautiful occasion, but it took him a while to be able to come out and truly, embrace and express who he was. So it, and for a lot of reasons, social reasons. And one day he told me, like, it's incredibly difficult for a lot of reasons that as a heterosexual male, I'll never understand. But one thing that I never brought up to him is that he chose to do anything. That vernacular was never even. I remember the day he came out to me, and I was like, okay. And we moved on, because that's not the totality of him as a person, as a man. And we moved on. So that was my experience of him having to, kind of navigate that space. But I was there not to accept, but just to offer love and support, just like I would do anybody else.
Thank you. So I know, you know, we always talk a lot about understanding, but what are some like true steps that you think businesses, corporations, and things can do to help create atmospheres of inclusion, regardless of one's personal views? What are some action steps or ideas, creative ways that you think organizations should start making this a priority?
So
I
this is
actually,
Rachel. I'm sorry, Randall. I just want to say that for me, um, as a department manager, what I do is I try to weave in that I have quite a few people that have same-sex marriages. I acknowledge it. I celebrate births. You know, I acknowledge when their spouse may be going through something. I make it a normal conversation. And I think that's what I want. Randall is a really good friend of mine, and I told him that I like these talks. And I hate it when we, as a corporation, MITRE Corporation is one of the largest systems engineering corporations that are out there that is not for profit. But however, we were very late to the game with DEI, and we still haven't gone far enough.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Randall.
Well, no, I think that Rachel touched on it, which I was just getting ready to say. I actually work with a corporation. They have through their DEI department, they actually have an LGBTQIA committee.
Mm.
And that committee is designed to bring, and this is a huge company that is very well known. That committee is designed to bring understanding through their infrastructure about LGBTQIA committee. So they have actually Zoom meetings where if you want to, it's not mandatory, where Zoom meeting where you can come and learn about gay pageantry. You can come and learn about Gay Pride Month. You can come and learn about gay events, just different things. And they offer that to their employees. You know, and those are that you're creating not only people that are gay, but you're creating allies so people can understand. And they do that probably every 2 or 3 times throughout the quarter. And I've actually had the pleasure of being their guest speaker a couple in the last few quarters. And we talk about gay pageantry. And, you know, and people are just interested because they want to know, oh, what about the drag shows? And what about, you know, the lifestyle and those kind of things? And I think that's one of the steps in the right direction because we have to focus on our diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, that's what it really, we need to be focusing in on understanding that people are diverse, you know, and all we want is equality and all we want to do is be included. So that's really what I think a lot of corporations need to be doing is really getting a DEI department and focusing in on trying to get exposure, because that's all the gay people really are needing is just exposure. That's what corporations need to realize. Sadly enough, gay people are here to stay. We ain't going nowhere.
Why is it sad, Randall?
Yeah, we ain't going nowhere.
I wouldn't want you to go anywhere, Randall.
Exactly. And gay people ain't going nowhere. But the wonderful thing is we're thriving. And the more we live, the more you're going to see gay people thriving and doing great things. You know, Pete Buttigieg, you know, being on the cabinet in our nation's capital. Those are starts. Those are just starts. We're going to be going, you know, people are going to be doing great things. So I just think that, you know, companies need to just focus on the diversity, the equity, and inclusion, and just realize we ain't going nowhere. So you need to embrace us and stop fighting us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because our tax dollars pay really well too.
Thank you, Jamaica, for your comment. She said she works with a company who encourages DEI. I'm a DEI ally and assigned to teams to discuss DEI. We're big on this. And I know some states are kind of doing away with DEI in some ways, I've heard, but you know, Jamaica's also North Carolina like I am. And so when I heard that, I was like, huh? What do you mean? DEI is everywhere here. We hear it a lot. But Kyle, I heard a little sound from you. Are you seeing that in places?
Absolutely. I feel like there was, you know, with a lot of topic areas and DEI, I feel like there was a boom. And you saw a lot of Black and brown folks being put in a position to head DEI spaces. But then I kind of felt it was a bit of tokenism and non-intentionality, which I think Rachel put in the chat, and some monetization over it as well. And now you're starting to see it kind of move back downstream a bit, and you're seeing a lot of people fired from those roles when those positions should be in perpetuity. They don't go away. Everyone needs to be heard. They need to be equitably around everything. Absolutely, Monica. So I just, I sighed because I see, almost it feels like along with the kind of the tech bubble bursting, the DEI bubble, to me, I feel like is bursting as far as the intentional support, the dollars, the time, the equity, the thought leadership that's placed behind it. I feel like it's not in the same place anymore. So the hope is that we can see that rise and maintain itself.
Absolutely. I think, it's like you said, the tokenism, like, why do I have to tell you how to treat me well? Why can't you do the work and figure it out and make it happen? So putting the minorities in the position to teach is tough at sometimes too.
But a lot of that is, of course, it's political. A lot of it is political, and it's our politicians, and there's certain states that have certain kind of rulers in their states that really, that's just a part of all of the bills to get rid of that are anti-gay bills, because they think that's the first thing they think of is diversity and inclusion. Oh, you're just trying to get the gays in. So those are just political woes that we're up against with all the trans bills, with all the gay bills, with all just whatever the bills are that are anti-gay bills. There are thousands of bills that are in our government right now to try to get rid of the gays. We're not going anywhere.
So with you speaking on that, and Rachel, I'll get to your hand just 1 second. I do see it. Why don't we raise up what are some primary issues of advocacy that are needed for the LGBTQ plus community, and if there are any specific to Black LGBTQ plus?
Politicians to speak out. That's the first step. Politicians, we need to get these political people to speak out that it's okay to be who we are. That's the start, but they're afraid to.
So then that means individuals going to their elected officials and asking for them to say that. So I'm saying, like, what can the common person do to help raise these issues up? And you mentioned some gay bills. Like, what are some of those specifically that are out for, someone who doesn't know or isn't, in touch politically to know what would they be asking their elected official to speak on?
Some states still can fire you for being gay. Some companies can still, in some states you can still be fired for being gay, just flat out.
Okay.
Of course, we got the issues with the transgender bathrooms. We got trans in sports. So you've got a whole bunch of bills that are out there that are that are about bashing or about getting rid of homosexuality or gay, or thinking that they're going to do it, or keeping it, sweeping it under the carpet. So there's tons of bills out there that our states and our representatives are going against. Again, you can, like I said, some companies you can still be fired for being gay or being openly gay.
Wow. Joy?
Yeah, I would say your student or your local school district, that is a big place where you can go and advocate. Going to your local school district, to your community meetings when it comes to the school, because the schools are really under attack for students who are part of the community and teachers as well. And so if you are a person in your community and you're concerned about the political ness of certain bills and things that are being put into place, going to those community meetings with the school district is vital. And you can do that. You don't have to be, well-versed in the politics or anything like that. You can just be a person who wants to come and say, I'm concerned that they've banned this book. I'm concerned that my kid can't be out at the school. I'm concerned that they weren't allowed to go to prom because they wanted to go with their same-sex boyfriend or girlfriend. I think that's a big one. And also the medical community still has a lot of work to do to hold space for people who identify as anything other than straight. When I go to the doctor and the doctor asks me, is there a possibility of me being pregnant? And every time I go to the doctor, I have to come out of the closet and say no, because you know, it's not what we do over here.
Mhm.
I think the medical community still has a lot of work to do to be more inclusive. And you can advocate for that as a patient to say, you know, my doctor didn't ask me the right questions. They made assumptions. They didn't, you know, try to get to know more about me or my life or my spouse or anything like that. And I did not feel like that was properly, you know, folded into my medical care. So those are things that you can do just as an everyday person.
I know here in North Carolina, we got hit with a pretty big bill at the beginning of this past school year, the Parents' Bill of Rights. And it speaks to, and it has a whole lot of language, of course, but the one, you know, that really hit home with us at the school was if a student comes in and they're Erica, we'll just throw out a name, Erica, and then 2 weeks later they say, no, call me Eric. My pronouns are he, him. We are to notify the parent that the child has requested to be called this name and these pronouns, and the parents can sue. And it's just this huge thing that, you know, the district is having to work through to determine what that looks like in the schools. And so that's been a big piece, because I mean, they put it out there like the day before school came in. So there was zero time to like work through it, figure it out. And so that's been a big one that I would say we at the school have had to be very creative. They've had to speak a lot on the safety of students, because we do know that not every child is safe at home as it relates to their sexual orientation and gender identity. And so thankfully there has been things put in place on a district level to provide for the safety of students in that regard. I did see one very good example where it helped a parent and child come together, and the child found out, you know, why the parent was a little taken aback by the chosen name. And then it was like, well, let's choose one together. And it became a collaborative, welcoming experience. But that can be very dangerous. And we know that. So definitely. And Brittany says in the chat, a candidate running for governor in North Carolina aiming to take same-sex marriage away. Simply don't support candidates aiming to take people's human rights away. And that's right. So knowing what people stand for. That's a big thing. Knowledge and knowing what people stand for, watching the meeting, not just when someone calls someone a blonde, bad-bodied person when it hits the news.
Oh, let's hear from Mr. Collins.
All the time. Because we see those all over, you know, trending on TikTok, but it's about being aware and being knowledgeable of what people stand for before you, you know, cast your vote. Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. We're gonna start wrapping up. So I just want to ask one more question before we go to our audience for questions. What are 2 ways that you hope to see the mental health field improve to meet the needs of the Black LGBTQIA+ community? Sorry. I guess my animal has an answer.
Little yap. I work a lot in evidence-based practices. I would love to see more evidence-based practices that are not done with just white people, white straight people. I would love to see more evidence-based practices that are intentional about using populations that are broad and dynamic, so that we can really say, if I'm going to say the research says, you know, trauma-focused CBT is effective with but the only people in that study were white and heterosexual, like what are we doing here? So research, I would love to see research be more diverse. That's number one. And I think, again, the medical community has a lot of work to do. They really do. And I would love to see more, again, I guess more kind of research-based, or at least more accountability in the medical community, that they have to catch up to the times. And you guys might not be able to unmute yourself. I had that same issue.
I would just, again, I won't say much. I wholeheartedly agree with Lauren. I think in the mental health space, and even as a clinician, everything is empirically driven, and we know data drives decision making. However, if you're using a monolithic lens to examine that data, it's not going to give you a full picture. So again, I think I agree, whether it's the medical community, the university community, whoever the decision makers and tastemakers might be, hopefully they're able to look at everything from a full spectrum and not just whatever, singular vision that they might have.
All right, so I'm gonna go to some questions that we have. So do you ask a person if they are gay or wait until they say something to you?
You wait, it ain't your business. Do I go around asking people, are you straight? It ain't your business.
Good point. That's a good point, Randall.
Yeah, that ain't your business. So why you gotta ask them? Now, if y'all are close enough friends, they should tell you if they wanted you to know.
So even as a close friend, you're saying no matter what the relationship is, you wait.
Stay in your lane. When they're ready to share with you, they will share with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
None of your business.
All right. So we talked about making a safe space for an ally and provider, but someone asked, how do you become a safe space for a coworker or friend?
Befriending them, communicate, talk to them. People can tell what you're an ally for by the way you communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that you say, some of the derogatory things that you say. You can tell a racist by just some of the small things that they say. You already know somebody who is biased about certain issues, certain things. So what you want to do is you want to become that person's acquaintance. And if it's meant to be a friendship, then it'll develop into a friendship and they'll start to trust you. But that trust has to be built.
Yes.
It really does. Yeah. And one of the things that I tell my clinicians, because we work with a lot of younger people who are questioning their sexuality, and sometimes my clinicians they'll clock it, so to speak, and they'll say, I think, but I don't want to ask, and I'm going to wait for them to say, but how can I let the client know that I am a safe space and that I'm affirming? And one of the things I always recommend that they do is when you're going to ask questions about like their dating life, again, if you're a clinician, you're probably going to ask about these kind of things with a teenage client, is to leave the spectrum wide open. So if I'm talking to a teenage boy, I might say, oh, you told me that you were interested in dating. Are you wanting a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or do you care about that kind of thing? And just make it real casual, and that just as soon as you put it out there and they can say, oh, okay, this person, I can say whatever to them. They're not like, trying to box me into anything. I think that's really helpful, just to leave it broad and open so that they know that you are okay with whatever it is that they have going on.
Yeah. No judgment zone. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. And Kyle added, listen to understand and not to respond. And I think also with the questions, ask to understand, not for your own curiosity. How about that? So, all right. Rachel, you had your hand up. We want to open the floor for live questions. Rachel, did you have a comment or a question that you wanted to add at this time?
Well, I think you guys touched on it. I don't want to duplicate the comments about bringing it to the forefront. But what I do want to say is, over the past few years, I've been joining more organizations. And a lot of times our state and local leaders come to those organizations to secure votes. And that's when we put the agendas on what our agendas are. And I think that for me, I would like to see more people pushing for the true meaning of equality, because you guys touched on it. Why do I care who you're dating or you're married to? What does it have to do with you and I being friends or me employing you? And I really would like to get away from that. I just want to make one last comment. I hired my my second in command. He's gay, and we don't advertise it, except for when someone said that they didn't see someone above a certain grade being they can't go beyond this. I was like, you really don't know diversity, because if you really look around at our leadership, we have diversity there. And diversity is just not being Black, brown, or, you know, olive color. It's a lot of things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Lauren Joy, were you about to add?
I think when it comes to the workplace, diversity looks much bigger than to what Rachel was saying. It's much bigger than just skin color or orientation. It's educational level, it's gender, it's socioeconomic status, it's a lot of different things. And I think again, coming back to that idea of like intersectionality, is that we don't know, like, I'm not clockable, so to speak. You wouldn't look at me
love
and
that
say,
I know what that means now.
right, now that we all are up on the vocabulary, yeah, you wouldn't look at me and say, oh, that's a lesbian right there. Not necessarily. And so, like, I have to come out repeatedly to a variety of different people, but I feel comfortable with that. A lot of people don't necessarily feel comfortable with that. So there may be more diversity in your workplace than you know, just people aren't, you know, coming at you with all of their labels. You don't know what people identify as. And so I think it's important to just continue to look for and try to just listen to the people that you're doing life with.
And you mentioned having to come out multiple times. So how does that impact someone's, you know, potential re-traumatizing themselves to have to come out multiple times in different spaces? How does that?
Yeah. In the beginning, I hated having to do it. I really, really strongly disliked having to constantly be like, oop, oop, hold on. Because it just felt, I don't know, it felt invasive, it felt awkward, it felt like I didn't know if it was safe all the time. But again, you know, I'm almost 40. I've been doing this for a long time. So my comfort level with it is really different. And I'm really proud of who I am. So now at this stage of my life, it doesn't faze me when I have to correct somebody, when somebody's like, oh, your husband. And I'm like, no. And it doesn't faze me. No. It doesn't faze me to have to do it now because I feel really proud of who I am. So I think it just depends on the journey that you're on with it.
Okay. So here's another question from the chat. When you know better, you do better. What are things that heterosexual people do that are offensive and disrespectful to the LGBTQ plus community?
Slang.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, what they call a gay person. You know, even though, you know, you may even have people that are close to you that know you're gay, but then they say, you know, I don't like that gay person. What are you saying? You're talking about me too then. You know, so, but they may not be the word they use, but you know, so it's really the slang. That's first and foremost, or not getting to know what I identify as and calling me that. Now a lot of times you get that where people, you know, you say, well, you know, call me them or they. And people don't understand the pronouns. And so they don't want to go with the pronouns. They're like, I'm gonna call you he. Well, I may not identify as he. So I think that's another thing. It's just understanding what I identify as. Or sometimes you can be looking like a whole man and somebody say, call me a she. That's not it's not your issue. It's what I tell you to call me. So you got to go by what I identify as. So a lot of times it's a slang in the terminology.
Okay. Anything else?
I 100% agree with what Randall said. And on the flip side of that is using gay vernacular to try to relate.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's not do that. You don't need to do that.
So is that that's like off limits? Like if my daughter says, Mom, why are you saying that? You know, some core. But so does that come with a certain relationship, or is that totally like,
I think it has to be authentic to you. I can tell when you're doing it just to try to be relatable to me, and it's not necessary. But if that's really how you talk, or you like some of the words or whatever, you think it's fun or whatever, that's different. But
Mhm.
I think, and it comes sometimes with good intentions, where a person is really just trying to say like, oh, I'm down, I'm with
Mhm.
you, I'm an ally, and it comes off just like,
Mhm.
hold on, you don't have to do all that.
That makes me also think about we talked about DEI and letting people be seen and showing who people are within the LGBTQ plus community. So what is that boundary and that line that crosses from wanting to showcase and see who you are to exploiting? Let me see you death drop every time they see you. Different things like that. What is that boundary that comes in play to know when someone has crossed the line? How can you tell?
That's
I
a
think
really
it's
good
obvious.
question.
I think it's obvious. You know when they cross the line, especially if you're close to them or not close to them. You kind of know. I mean, for the people that you're close to, you correct them.
Okay.
For the and oftentimes, and I mean, I find this happens a lot with a lot of our gay people, with our LGBTQIA community, is most of them are a little hostile. So when they see that, their hostility comes out, and it's like, oh, Miss Thing, I know you're not talking to me like that, or oh, honey, who are you talking to? You don't know me, because they go into an offense. They automatically go into an offense because you cross that line. But now someone that you're closer to, you can tell them that's inappropriate. We don't use that language, or we don't use that. You're a bit too aggressive. Calm down, sweetie. We don't act like that, and keep it moving. So I think that's the issue. But oftentimes you have to just kind of tell them.
So it's you have to be well versed in confrontation or confronting issues in a peaceful manner, kind of, right?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, you have to be, but unfortunately, a lot of our LGBTQIA community, it's not in a peaceful manner.
Okay.
It's a little hostile.
But because difficult conversations are just that, they're difficult. And so when you're having to constantly address disrespect, offense, I can imagine that gets hard. And so perhaps I think when we talk needs, perhaps that's a need also within, any marginalized community. But today we're, speaking of Black LGBTQIA plus, how to have a difficult conversation, how to confront disrespect in that way. Okay. So there's another question here asking, which grassroots organizations do you work with?
NAMI.
You better speak it. And there is NAMI is located where? Do we have NAMI in all states?
So NAMI is the largest grassroots nonprofit in the country. So there's 600 affiliates. So there's a NAMI in damn near every city, every state. So you can always be connected, but NAMI Philly is here for everybody. So we have support groups. We have everything you might need. So again, if you can't find a NAMI that maybe you don't necessarily connect to in your community, NAMIphilly.org, we will work with you and we will support you.
And what does NAMI stand for?
National Alliance of Mental Illness. I feel like that was a real shameless plug, and I'm sorry, y'all. I felt the spirit compelled me, and I said, let me go ahead and answer this question.
Well, we'll say, speak out, Kyle. Speak out.
Thank you. There you go. Validate my feelings. Thank you.
Yeah. I love NAMI, and I recommend it to a lot of my parents that have kids with the diagnosis that they are really struggling to understand. I think NAMI is a great organization. Again, I'm a little bit spoiled because I live in Los Angeles, but the LGBTQ center here is phenomenal. They do so much work about education, getting housing, having safe space. They advocate, they go to meetings, they help with policy, they meet with policymakers. But there's LGBTQ centers all over the country. I think the Los Angeles Center, it's Los Angeles, so it's a little, we're a little different over here. But I think NAMI is incredible. I agree with Kyle that it can be a plug, but it's a great organization.
It's a great plug, right? Great plug.
And Rachel also, I'm sorry, so that question, look, we spotlighted anyway, but Rachel was asked that based on a part of her comment, so she has answered one that she works with the National Council of 100 Black Women.
Yes, and I just want to add to that is that I have the fortune to be a part of a lot of things because I am here in the DC area. So that's where I try to push, you know, different things. I have too many people that I care about that have had to be silent for too long.
Okay, thank you so much. I used to live in the DMV, and yes, there's so many resources there for sure. All right, another question here. Did TV shows like Pose or Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, did they create awareness for LGBTQIA+ communities, or were they detrimental?
No, very much awareness. I think it's very much awareness. I think shows like those, as well as RuPaul Drag Race, things of that nature, has brought it to mainstream America. It's kind of giving you an insight of what we do in this community. So I think, you know, it doesn't hurt, because I think a lot of times your closeted people or your bigoted people are at home watching that stuff, wanting to be a part of that community, or doing it on the down low. So I definitely think it has brought exposure. I definitely think it has brought a lot more knowledge to our community. So I continue to say, let's continue to thrive with communities, with television shows that brings out and talks about our community. There's a lot of shows that hone in on gay shows and heterosexual and gay relationships and things of that nature. And I think we just need to continue to thrive. I think it only helps. It only helps with the exposure. So I don't think it's detrimental, because most of the time they're not in a negative light. You know, it's not in a negative light. So most of those shows are pretty much positive. So I think that
might be where they're getting the vernacular from, Lauren Joy.
Right.
From the TV shows. I agree.
From the TV shows, absolutely. So, yeah.
I agree with Randall 100%. I think especially with the shows that have come out in like the last 5 years, where characters aren't the gay character anymore. They're just a person who happens to be bi, queer, questioning, gay, lesbian, and it's not a part of their character arc. It just is. It just is. And I think that is such a healthy way to show our community, and not having us be a part of the plot point. I think is really wonderful.
Are there any specific shows that you like the most that you would recommend someone watch to understand?
I love Atypical. It's a great show. It's a show about a young man on the autism spectrum, but his sister experiences her first gay relationship. I think Special is really good too. It's about a gay man who has cerebral palsy. It's very, very good, very funny. I love The Fosters. That's an old one. That's from like the 2000s. We love that show. There's so many good reality shows too. Reality shows are great because you're seeing real people. RuPaul's Drag Race is an incredible show. It's an incredible show.
What was the first one that you said?
Atypical.
Atypical. Okay. So Atypical, Special, Fosters, RuPaul's Drag Race.
I mean, I could go on and on. I could.
Right. All right. Great. And Randall, you keep saying these words that make me think of a question. You said down low, and you know, at one point in time that was a huge thing, you know, about down low brothers, right? So being that more people are out and proud, have we seen a decline in being down low, quote, or do we still see that happening a lot?
They're gonna be down low until they're comfortable in their skin. They you know, what they do behind closed doors, they will not bring out to the public. Some people will always be down low. Yeah, so you haven't seen a decline. You will be so surprised. I mean, unfortunately, you will be so surprised at a lot of people. I'm not gonna say men, but I'm gonna say a lot of people who are living the gay lifestyle, but secretive. So, you know, and that makes them on the down low. You know, men and women. You know, men and women who are experiencing this lifestyle, but they don't live the lifestyle out in public.
Okay. So another question from the chat. Homophobia impacts the mental health of some heterosexual people. What do you say to the person who is homophobic?
That's your problem.
You're all about staying in your lane, aren't you?
It's about saying, well, you can't change someone's identity or lifestyle. And so if that affects you, then there's something is wrong with your mental health.
Mhm.
If that's something affects you, you definitely need to go see NAMI. Yeah, if you're concerned about somebody else's lifestyle, something's wrong.
Mm.
And that's with anything or anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in your lane. Let them live their life. You don't have to repent for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a lot of that in Black and brown communities.
Yes.
And pseudo masculinity, the pause culture. Every time anything, you know, they do might be slightly, they would say might be gay leaning. Pause. If anybody follows Cameron and Mace, they have a popular sports show, and the popular joke is anytime there's anything that they might feel is suggestive, they say pause, but they don't realize like the central point of that is offensive as hell. It's incredibly offensive, and you know people enjoy it, but I don't think people understand the homophobia that's really at the center point.
And I've heard my students say that, but I did not know where it came from. Like, because I've heard them say it, anything suggestive, not just homosexual, but just period, you know. And so,
and it didn't start with them. From what it came from Harlem, from what I understand, way back when. But it's kind of been popularized again with with that show, and then it's kind of migrated into the culture. So, but it's problematic at its core if you really think about it.
Yep. Same as people saying, "Oh, that's so gay,"
when
you're doing things, and that negative connotation of what it means to be gay, being negative in your behaviors and words and actions. Yep. All right. Again, our floor is still open. If anybody wants to come up and speak, comment, or you can put something in the chat. We have a question coming up. So is there still a belief of the stereotype that gay people have AIDS?
Oh, I don't think so. There's so many advancements now medically that it's you very rarely will people die from AIDS at this point. So there isn't that same stigma. And I think there's been a lot more acceptance about preventative medicines, which I think is really wonderful because it really makes me feel proud that the community is protecting itself and not feeling the shame of like, this secret disease that's out there, but that there's education and support about, taking PrEP and doing things to really keep yourself safe. I don't think so.
And I agree, I don't think so, but I also think it's because of medical advancement, but it's also because it has poured over into our Black community. HIV and AIDS have poured over in our Black community, whether it's through sexual intercourse or through drug use. But the largest growth of people that are being affected by HIV now are Black women.
Black women, yeah.
And it's because of drug use and because of those DL men that are sleeping with both parties. So I think now it's becoming a little bit more accepting because it is affecting our African-American women, as well as not just a gay disease now, and it's definitely not a Black gay man disease. It's affecting us all.
Yeah, and I will say, because I did watch the whole series of Pose, and I loved it. And it was very, I felt it was very educational to me, speaking on that, plight with HIV and AIDS coming, to the forefront at that time, and the houses, and just understanding of the community and everything. So that was one place when we talked about TV shows. Pose was one where I saw, how the impact of getting tested at that time for, LGBTQIA plus people, and specifically Pose, highlight people of color in a lot of ways. So yeah, I definitely learned a lot from Pose. Yep. All right, so we've got about 9 minutes remaining tonight. This has been wonderful conversation. And everyone in the audience still has time to ask questions and things like that if they would like to. But I do have a couple closing questions for the panel as well. So one, I would ask, what tips would you give to service providers and allies of Black LGBTQ plus individuals? That's part one. And what would you say to an individual of the LGBTQ plus community who is in need of mental health services? What would you say to the provider and ally? And also, what would you say to someone of the community who needs to seek services?
Well, I think the providers, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm my bad, Randall. I'm just gonna keep it short and sweet. I think for the provider that is looking to offer support, check themselves before they go to offer anything. And that's for any, but specifically, you know, we're talking about check yourself, check your biases at the door before you go and step in and want to offer holistic support.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Anybody else have anything to add?
No, I think that's perfect. And I think the next thing is for a person that needs mental health, whether they're gay or not, I think you need to talk to, I'm a proponent of telling people just point blank, why don't you go talk to someone?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you see something that's unstable, see someone that's unstable, some instability, I'm a proponent of telling you, why don't you go talk to someone?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need me to help you find a resource?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that's what's going to help them is you have to not only tell them, but you also have to provide them the resource. And that's what I think is very key. Because if you see somebody unstable, that's when you really, you gotta talk it out. Because sometimes they don't think that you see it.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're hiding it. But if you see it, you need to talk to them and say, hey, why don't you go talk to someone? It helps. And oftentimes you can tell a personal story. Because then if they get caught up, it's like, oh, I talk to a therapist all the time. I talk to a therapist because I need to keep my mental health wealthy. You know, I need to be able to have an outlet. So in order to do that, this is who I see. Now you don't have to go to this person, but I definitely say you go to that, because when they see that you have a lived experience, they're a little bit more understanding. Oh, okay, I can do that. And if they don't do it the first couple of times, they may do it the third or fourth time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Resources are extremely important. And if you check the chat, our Sound Minds visionary has dropped a bunch of resources in there, including NAMI, Kyle. And so, you know, you can copy paste that, take a picture if you need to, always. And sometimes we keep resources on hand just because you never know who you might talk to, who you might run across. You know, there's a lot of positive shirts out. Sound Minds, here's a plug, has a shirt, you know, you good. And I have worn that and someone has said, I'm not good.
Mm-hmm.
So then what? Right? It's like, whoa, I'm called to action. So, you know, with what you wear, you know, on your shirts and things like that, someone may find, you know, you someone that is safe and someone to talk to. So even if you're taking these resources just to have on hand in case you come across somebody who will need them, that's important. Also, Trevor Project is specific to LGBTQ youth. And so that's a great organization as well. They have phone and text chat support lines and things for youth who need help. All right, so our last closing question for you all today, and we want everyone to answer this, please. How can one better support their loved ones who are a part of the LGBTQIA+ community?
Go to Pride.
Hmm.
Go to Pride. If you've never been to Pride, go. Go to a Pride event. You don't have to go to the whole big parade and this and that, but there's lots of events that are going to be held in your city this month, throughout the month of June. Just go and experience what it's like to be in the community. Experience what it's like to be around people who feel prideful about who they are, who are wanting to show and showcase the fun, the exciting, sometimes a little scandalous. Just go in and enjoy it. See what it's like, especially if you've never been. It's such a fun way to kind of like be in community. And it can look like a lot of different ways. Again, you can go to the parade, you could go to author reading at a local bookshop, you can go to a club, you want to, you know, do some dancing, some two-stepping. Local community events, picnics, there's all kinds of things. I think it's a really great way to just invest in the community. Also support your local LGBTQ businesses.
Are there networks that tell, like how I've seen stuff for like Black businesses, are there databases that tell about LGBTQ plus businesses? Okay.
Mm-hmm. If you look at any of your local LGBTQ centers, they will have lists of businesses that you can support for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Randall, what would you say?
I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna agree with Lauren Joy, but what I'm also going to do, I'm gonna start at the foundation. It's about acceptance. And I think the person needs to put it in their heart to be accepted, to accept that gay person in their family. First of all, I think what happens is we have this judgment factor that we give to other people, but we don't realize that we're not perfect either. So that family member has probably accepted some of your idiosyncrasies. That family member has accepted your behavior, your disbeliefs, and all the things that you've done that have been immoral. So I think most of the time we have to understand that it's a two-way street. So you need to accept them for who they are and for where they are, because most of the time they've accepted you for who you are and where you are. And I think that's the biggest thing, is acceptance. And it's just realize once you accept them, then you want to learn their lifestyle. Be interested, genuinely interested in their lifestyle. And you'll realize it's not any different than what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's all about who you are attracted to. But other than that, there's no difference. We put our pants on one leg at a time. We put our hat on the same way. We put our glasses on the same way. We walk the same way. We earn the same way. We earn money the same way. We pay the same taxes. There's nothing that's different. You don't have to sleep with us if you don't want to. We're not asking you to. So I think that's the
you don't want to sleep with everyone. That's a
right. You don't want to sleep with
everyone too. It's like you don't want to
sleep with every man or woman. Exactly. You're picky. You're so that's what I think a lot of times is about acceptance, and it's about really getting into the lifestyle and understanding what a person and who a person is and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But definitely go to Pride.
You taking me, Randall? I'm coming to Atlanta to go with you.
Come on, let's go to Pride. Let's go to Black Pride. You get a handful at Black Pride. That's around Labor Day weekend.
Okay. Lauren Joy, you in?
I've never been to Atlanta Pride, but it looks fun.
Oh, come on. This year we've got an international, this is the first time an international group out of, I think they're out of Canada. They're coming to celebrate Black Pride with Atlanta. So it's supposed to be really huge this year.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. So in addition to the large group of resources that were dropped, there are also some individual messages in here. So please take note of those. Thank you, Tanya, for the additional resources. Thank you, Jamaica. Anybody else who has some resources, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We welcome all resources, all positive, great, accepting resources that'll be helpful to us all. And Kyle put his answer to the question in the chat. He stated, approach everyone with a listening ear and an open heart.
Perfect.
So, thank you. And Monica also stated, as far as the businesses, sometimes you can see that they have the flags visible. So sometimes, and that may be that they're a business that is owned by or an ally who supports those who are in the community. So I want to thank you all for being a part of this very important conversation tonight. Thank you again to our panelists, Kyle, Lauren Joy, and Randall. We know that you all are very busy in your respective spaces, and so we thank you for etching out a piece of your time for us today, as that is a very important resource in and of itself, right? Our time. So next Wednesday, June 12th, for our Speak Out series, it is entitled Breaking the Silence, Postpartum Depression in Women of Color. Please join us then. Our team is putting the Zoom registration link in the chat now. You can go ahead and click that. Again, all of our Speak Out series sessions are free of charge. You just must register to be able to receive the link to attend. As shared earlier, the virtual discussions are a prelude to our 4th annual Sound Minds Mental Health Awareness and Solutions Conference, which will be on Thursday, July 11th, here in person on the campus. I'm sorry, I said here because I'm actually here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's where it is. But not everybody knows that. So here in Greensboro, North Carolina, on the campus of Bennett College, and we will also have it live streamed. So no matter where you live, you can be there. Turn up the volume is our call to action to amplify both voices and change in a world where mental health disparities continue to persist within Black and Hispanic communities. We have a dynamic lineup of sessions that you don't want to miss. Registration is open. To learn more, click the Eventbrite link our team is putting in the chat as well. Thank you again for joining us for the first of 3 Speak Out series sessions, Empowering Voices, Understanding Mental Health in the Black LGBTQ+ community. Remember, together we can empower, together we can speak out. Have a great night and afternoon. Enjoy.
Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed night.
Blessed night.